reminder that we will be recording this panel. So Dina has already hit the recording button. Thank you so much. And if you would prefer not to be recorded, please keep your camera off. My name is Angela, and I'm one of the two deputy regional directors for the Africa group of the Global Network for Human Rights and the Environment. I also work in the law division of the United Nations Environment Programme. As you all know, this is the second year that UNEP and the Global Network for Human Rights and the Environment are co-hosting this school, together with Dina Lupin, who is connected as well. She's the director of the Global Network and whom you all know by now. We could not be prouder to be hosting such an excellent group of lecturers and experts. Throughout this week, we've really been honored to have a series of brilliant and thought-provoking lectures and panel sessions on all matters water and human rights. We've covered many regions and country-specific examples on various aspects of the topic, and we've been joined by some true experts in the field. Today, this second panel, which will continue on the theme of water governance that we heard yesterday as well, but this time looking at specific examples from Brazil and China under the topic of governance tools to approach water as a human right. The central hypothesis of the panel is that there's no sustainable development without the separation between natural and social worlds. So water is not just part of the ancestry tradition, nor just a commodity, but is a human right to be realized in connection with others to improve the lives of the most vulnerable. So with that, let me hand over to the chair of this session, Daniele Minges. Denny, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Over to you, Daniele.
Perfectly. Thank you, Angela. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the organizers and for this amazing opportunity to have this global conversation in such a dynamic way. So first, I will start a short presentation and then I'll lend the floor to my co-panelists to further the discussion about Brazil. And in meanwhile, we wait for the China team to log in. So in a minute, we'll have a decision about this part of the panel. So first, we will talk about governance in Brazil. Specific my topic that I want to bring here today is about first, having the concept of water as a human right. It's very important and meaningful in a legal sense, especially to have the coordination and the importance that the topic requires. So safe, sufficient, affordable water and sanitation and hygiene facilities are important, essential to any human being, and is a fundamental right. In Brazil, we have a constitution that deals with fundamental rights, and so this is automatically have this status. And internationally, we have the United Nations expressing that openly, the status of as a human right, and also the Agenda 2030, including in the SDG 6, the right to water. And another important thing is a decade that we are planning to fast forward our access globally to water. So let's get to the point of the SDG and the Water Action Decade that we on. First, I want to point out that water and sanitation is not alone, and it has to have all aspects and relations needed to be implemented. So sanitation for all, drinking water for all, local participation, international participation and cooperation, healthier ecosystems to maintain and sustain this quality of water in abundance, and integrated water management and quality and also efficient water use. This is very important for my talk because from a point of view of governance and private governance and business and human rights, this topic here of efficiency is very important because it's not only a matter of public policies, but also the corporate and the business side to use governance and due diligence to make their production more efficient and more circular and using less resource, including water resources. So COVID, especially in this topic, is a highlight of all the lackness that we have in our topic. To give you an idea, many people didn't have any sanitary condition to prevent the virus. For example, they didn't have drinking water or sanitation. 4 billion people didn't have sanitation at home. Imagine that. And 2 in 5 hospitals didn't have soap and water to clean hands. So how can you fight a virus which needs to have this hygiene, especially with hand washing, to prevent people to get sick without this facility? So it's very important, and the pandemic shed a light over this problem that was already very acute, but now we see that in a neon light, showing us that water scarcity is too deep and a big challenge. And in a point of view of funding here, I want to show you that this number, that 61% of the countries don't have enough resources to implement the access to water. So it's a global challenge that we have to use this decade, and this is the goal of the decade of water, to tackle this challenge that we are facing. So, from a point of view of economics, we need to change our paradigm of economic business as usual, as we are practicing today. It will lead us to a terrible extinction. So we need to change our patterns of production, consumption, and this is the possible way. The bioeconomy paradigm shows us that we can use less resources, for example, less water, less bioresources, plants, animals, land space, to produce the same or even more amount of products. In using this and doing this through technology, the smart use of new technologies that can increase sometimes 5 times the present day's conditions. But this is not economically viable per se. We need economic law, public intervention in the economy to give the competitiveness to this technology to be scaled up in the speed that we need to further this transition and speed up this transition as soon as possible. So in order to have more people working in green jobs, using less resources, distributing to closer place, reusing the same resources many times, recycling recycling it and also disposing it in a correct way, so we can keep the logic of no waste by design. For example, we don't have to have particles that are not usable another time. So we need to design our production system to have this circular, because you don't have waste, you use it. The outcome of one production and use of material is the input of the second one, the following. And also in a sustainable way. And what I mean by sustainable is to try, not try, but it's mandatory to us to find the solutions, having in mind the SDGs, to include everyone and not using this high-tech bioeconomy to increase the problems we already have. For example, lack of food and in the social disparities. We need to try to bring this technology to work to people and society. And this is an important ethical way to bear in mind. Another concept that is important to my argument is water footprint. So everything that we produce can be measured in the impact that this production, this product, this service had in the use of water. For example, the green water, the rainwater that was needed to produce that crop that you use in food, for example, the groundwater that was embedded in the transportation for via a ship, for example, and also the gray water. For example, how many pollutants, maybe it's not chemical pollutants, but temperature increase of the water, for example, that this production brought to the environment. So it's important, and this water network has an important methodology to try to calculate the amount of waters, green, blue, and gray, that the products have embedded. So it's better to us to have this in mind and construct our corporate responsibility, social and environmentally, bearing this in mind that we have the production that uses indirectly water. So it's not only a simple and direct question, oh, do the company have sanitary facilities to all workers? But not that, it's do the production of that product is efficient enough? It could be better, use less water, pollute less, extract less water from the rivers and aquifers, or use more efficiently the rainwater. So this is the point. And the framework, the idea of business and human rights is already very established since the GNHRE framework that created these guidelines to companies and governments and society to protect this kind of activities. So, but the idea is the principles for business and human rights, they bring three different responsibilities. Governments, the duty to protect against abuses; business, the responsibility to respect all human rights, and also conduct due diligence to prove that they are efficient and ethical in their production, and society to have the effective access to remedies. So, but because the guiding principles lack enforcement, it's only a guiding principle, is soft law. Not really, we don't see many legal claims using this sort of argumentation. It's only a principiological thing, but we are seeing some changes, especially with some litigations that are more nowadays. For example, the Dutch claim against Shell that was that granted the protection to the future generation and condemned Shell to have a more committed business responsibility towards climate change. So this is a change in the argumentation that possibly are coming forward due to the emergency of the topic. So in a way, greening a little bit the human rights and the business and human rights discussion. So especially to Brazil, it's important to highlight that we have another kind of water. We have the flying rivers. I'm not sure if you were aware of it, but some airborne humidities are so heavy in liquids that they are equivalent to the whole Amazon river capacity. So imagine a whole Amazon river that is one of the biggest river in the world flying around in the clouds. And this is very important to Brazil because deforestation breaks the cycle of water, and these flying rivers they are decreasing and they may not occur anymore. So this will bring the whole south of Latin America to heavy droughts and changes of the access to water in a very significant way. Some authors call this an agrocidio. That means that like you have ecocide, you also have agrocide, because if you don't have water, you don't have any agriculture to produce. You don't have any land humidity needed to produce agriculture, and agriculture is a main business in Brazil, as everybody knows. So this is very unwise for us as a country to keep the deforestation. We would better protect and regenerate our forests that are now degraded, our many soils that are underused, than doing deforestation, because it's very not only a climate and even an environment crime sometimes, because illegal deforestation is a crime in Brazil. It's criminal law, but also very unwise economically. So in pragmatic and business-oriented way of seeing this, we should have another approach, especially taking in mind that this argument and measurement of the virtual water What is exactly? The virtual water is what is embedded in agriculture, for example. So inside any crop, any product, you have an equivalent of water. And normally the methodology to have this this amount of water embedded in the agriculture is only what is used, for example, in irrigation. But if we include the physical and economic scarcity, for example, it's very social costly, it's very expensive to put more water, it is very inefficient. So you increase the price of this water. So, and you see, Brazil here is a very inefficient user of water. We have a lot of water, but we use it so much and in a so unwisely way that we are calculating here that we are less in a less water stress situation than China, that is much more wisely user of the water resources. So, and basically what we have in Brazil is the use of water very strong to irrigation, and also in much less quantity of the other uses, but we don't, the Brazilian legal system let the government to make companies to pay for the usages of water when they have to have an authorization of use of water. And for our surprise, the agriculture is the main use of water, but is the sectoral part of Brazilian economy that pay less for the water. I don't have time. I already used more than my time for this, but I will put a link in the chat with some graphs that show this discrepancy between uses and governance methods. So now I will pass the floor to one of the most important specialists in water law in Brazil. Please welcome Maria Luisa Granziera, that has many books, more than 20 or 30 years of experience in the area of water law. So I'm very glad that she is here and I am able to hear her presentation. So please, Graziada, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniele. Thank you for everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good night for everybody. Thank you for coming to our panel. I'm very happy to be part of this team, and I thank the organization of the event for the opportunity to share here some experience developed in Brazil. I will share my presentation. Let's see if it goes. Yes. Do you see it? Okay. I think I want to put in the presentation because I can see you if it's necessary. So, well, I brought here experience. As Brazil has a lot of water, I will talk about a region that has little water. I will talk to you about the Agua Doce program. Agua Doce means fresh water program. It's a specific vision of water management at the Brazil semi-arid region. What is the semi-arid? Where is the semi-arid region? This region encompasses the northeast of Brazil and the north of the state of Minas Gerais. And the world's most populous semi-arid region on the planet. There, 22 million people live in this part of the country, representing 12% of the Brazilian population. There are 1,300 municipalities, and it's 5% of the GDP of Brazil. This is a map of the delimitation of Brazilian semi-arid. It is Caatinga biome, and you can see by the red line the limits of the semi-arid in 2005, and you can see also that it increased all over the years. This is a map of 2017. And the truth is that the process of the certification doesn't stop, and the semi-arid region increases each year, putting at risk the water security for population, for this huge population. The climate situation, why this region doesn't have enough water. The water availability is determined by the rainfall regime, but it only rains 3 or 4 months a year. The rest of the time, no water. And even so, even when it rains, the distribution of the rainfall has irregular patterns in different territories, and so you never know how much water we will have the next year, because all the negotiations about the permits of water, the authorizations to use water are negotiated each year, because we don't know what will be what will happen in the future. Besides, the soil is shallow because it's a characteristic of the crystalline aquifer. And because the situation, the infiltration is not sufficient to keep the land moist, minimizing the effects of drought. The consequences are that the populations faces problems in the supply of water and to maintain the productive process. So in some regions, the water is far from people. And people must carry water by multiple ways, by carts, by trucks, or even by donkeys, where in Semi-Arid they call jegues. It's a very traditional figure, persona in Semi-Arid. But it's clear that if there are 22 million people living in Semi-Arid, of course there are solutions found to maintain or to keep the water sustainability. So there are reservoirs, pipelines, or to transport the water, reservoirs to keep the water after the rain, to preserve the water. And also integration channels between reservoirs and or hydrographic basins. This photo here is a part of the exposition of the Rio São Francisco River, the São Francisco River, which is the biggest transposition in Brazil, and very important to make this service, to do the service, to get water to people to access the, sorry. to access water, but all these works are not sufficient. There are other situations about water, even worse. In some areas, the rivers are non-perennial. And there is also a strong process of relation, high rates of evapotranspiration and average temperatures. So the groundwater is often the only source available to the communities. And 70% of the wells have brackish or saline water. Because of that, many wells were abandoned and people stay without water. Lack of fresh water and the necessity to recover the wells and implement desalination systems. This why exists the Agua Doce program or freshwater program created in 2003. But simply recovering wells and installing desalination systems is not enough to guarantee the continuous supply of good quality water for families. It's necessary to implement the desalination systems, all the system, physical system, but especially to implement solid structures of cooperation and social participation. It's absolutely necessary to put in this atmosphere the governance. The goal, when it was created, this program, the goal was to establish a permanent public policy to access to quality water for human consumption through the sustainable use of groundwater, incorporating 3 points: technical, environmental, and social care in the implementation and management desalination system in the Brazilian semi-arid region. It's important to see that without this participation, without the local population, it would be impossible to implement this kind of system. And so Agua Doce program started, and it is implemented by municipalities. But in the beginning, it was necessary to choose which cities would receive this program first. It was created an index called the Semi-Arid Water Access Condition, formed by indicators as higher susceptibility to the desertification process, lower human development index, high percentage of infant mortality, low rainfall, and difficulty to accessing water resources. So the cities that were in the worst situation could receive first the benefits of the program, the Agua Doce program. The system operation is quite simple. The brackish water or saline water that comes from the well is pumped to the desalination system to a treatment of this crude water, and the crude water treated produces the desalinator produce two effluents: the concentrate, which is that it's conducted to evaporation tanks, and the water treated that suffer a treatment of chlorine to become available and to be available to be distributed to people in fountains. So it's not complicated, but it's essential to keep people with the minimum of water they need to live. The question is the community, but this system, as I told, only the system doesn't do anything. It's necessary a periodic monitoring by the state teams. mainly in the beginning, when people must learn how the system works, they must be trained to work with the new system. And as I told also, the strong point of the program is the effective participation of communities and the representatives of municipalities, states, federal government, in order to reinforce care as well as the management of the salination system. I put some photos here because you can see a little bit the reality. There are very poor cities, but they can now have water security, which changes a lot the lives and also the health, because the brackish water, it's impossible to drink. And the point is that this system is okay, is good for population, but needs permanent institutional effort and resources. So it's not an independent system that I put there and everything will be okay. No, it's very, there is a dependence very strong between the local communities and the stakeholders of government who have the resources and also the technology, the know-how, how to operate those systems. Well, but it's not only a physical system. It's also an agreement, a social agreement, transformed in legal documents that define the responsibilities of each part of their management. As an example, for instance, members of the community take over the operation. They have to be trained and they have to solve little problems and work with the systems. The electricity cost, because of the pumping of water, taken over by the municipality or the community, or even though for the government, the federal government. But each community, when possible, is encouraged to create a reserve fund to cover the cost of operation. And in mineral repairs, and each community establishing a monthly amount to be paid per family. And this is the modern financial support, is a way to put people feeling being part of the system, being they can appropriate, they are the owners of the system. The system is not, the government puts something there and I'm here, so I have to receive or not. No, I am part of the system. And this is important to develop the Agua Doce program. And I think it's the successful experience is because the local people feel that they are part of this program. In this map, I put here this map to show more or less the distribution of the program in the Semi-Arid. You see here Ceará, which is very dry, and this part, you see that Houston Francisco passes by here, and even though people who is 200 kilometers from Houston Francisco they don't have waters. It's very complicated, the situation. But now there are 1,000 systems installed, and there is now the capacity to produce about 2 million liters of drinking water per day and benefit approximately 200,000 people. Agua Doce, it's a successful experience in Brazil, but it's a long way yet to achieve the goal completely, because there are many people there, many problems, a great poverty, And there is a real need from the other stakeholders to make the agreements with local population. But it's a good news that it exists, and we always want that the program will continue for the next years. So that's the experience of Agua Doce program. And I thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. It was amazing. It's very important to have this in mind, that we have many Brasis in Brazil. It's continent. And I was talking about rivers flying with lots of water. And then on the other side, just northeast of the same river flow, a drought area and almost desert area. So it's very important. Governance is more evident. The governance need is more evident.
Yes. As you were talking about rivers, lots of water, I was thinking, when I will talk, I will show another reality.
Another Brazil.
Yeah,
Thank
you. Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to hear you, Graziella, Professor Graziella. Now we have China with us, Professor Douglas. Yeah, it's already night there. Professor Douglas is the chair of law in the School of Lanzhou. Did I pronounce correctly? Ni hao. Please, the floor is yours, Douglas. Pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me here. Yeah, it's correct. Lanzhou University. I'm in a location very close to the desert, so water is very scarce up here, close to the Gobi Desert. Well, let me share my presentation with you, so we can start from there. Can you see my presentation? Okay. Well, this is. This research is part of a broader agenda in which I apply the third world approaches to international law, and here I'm applying to international water law. Before I jump into Danielle, do I have 15 minutes, right? Okay, 15. Let me just make sure to keep track of the time here. So I'm sure you're very familiar with this figure here, talking about water distribution around the world. So I'm not going to spend too much time here talking about that, the evenness or uneven distribution of water around the world. Neither in this other graphic here that present to us a very
we are not seeing the new slides, only the welcome slide.
We're not seeing this?
Only the welcoming slide, the first one.
Well, I'll stop the share. Let me try again. Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Just a second here. Okay. Okay, let's try again here. Okay. Can you see this one? Water distribution,
The first
water
one,
stress.
the first one I can see.
Okay, well, let me, I'm trying the presentation mode, but it's not working, so.
I think it's because you've not scrolled it down, that's why.
No, no, it's working.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Can you see it?
Yeah?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. So I'll leave this without the presentation mode, so you can see it. I don't want to waste time on that. So this one is it brings to us this urgent situation regarding the water stress around the world, according to the Statista. By 2040, we're going to see an extreme high water scarcity around the world. So regarding water and transboundary water, we have this social world we have to deal with. As you can see here, we're talking about sovereignty and artificial boundaries in which the world it is divided. At the same time, we have nature, which is a gestalt. I mean, it is a one thing interconnected, connected that poses a very a challenge to the social world and how to regulate the uses of natural resources. And that's the biggest issue in terms of dealing with nature and the separation between the natural world and the social world for us international lawyers. So what's going to be the approach to transboundary water or any other resource, natural resource? It's going to be the paradigm of the state with artificial boundaries, with a world in which the system it is anarchical. So every single state will seek their own interest and survival just, or we're looking into the cooperation.
Douglas, I think you are froze.
Should we just give him a minute and see if he's able to
Reconnect.
reconnect? No, I think we've lost him. I think he's dropped out of the meeting.
Should I pass the floor? Oh no, he's back. Douglas, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm back. Okay. Sorry, internet here is very slow today. So we have to deal with this the social world and the natural world, which is a difficult. And as you can see here, when we insert in the equation the need or the variable of development, we see clearly this division within these two separate worlds, and here represented by the ecological space divided by the north and the global south, and mostly all the north taking the natural resources benefits. So let me just jump here to international law. There are traditional spaces in which there are production or reproduction of international law. As I said, it is a very challenging task to regulate or to combine the social and natural world. And that's why the third world approach to international law is very helpful to look into how the ecological space, nature, it is regulated by international law. And when we look into the third world approach to international law, we see that first, I just quote here Makau Mutua, which is a very strong statement. International law is illegitimate. I don't believe that that is totally true, but it causes a lot of thinking about when we looked into this this quote from him, because he's calling the attention that international law is full of meta-narratives or totalizing statements that are very excludent. For example, Europe is the center. Christianity is the basis for the civilization, and capitalism is innate to humans and the only form to dealing with the economy. Imperialism is a necessity to save the savages from themselves, and this is even true today. I'm not just talking about in the 1500s. We're talking about the international institutions as it is right now. Universality of international law is a very excluding feature because there are other alternatives or alternative views of the worlds. Narratives to justify the exclusion. For example, we see from since the 1500s with the great navigations, we see the transformation of the use of nature or the term nature in international law, which includes human species, to the environment, which implies things that surround humanity. It is a separation, and this is one of the things that we perceive when looking into international law as a whole, not just regarding water. We know that dealing with water, it is necessary, and of course, according to traditional international law, it is also an obligation to cooperate in order to access or to deal with water issues. The basic mechanism in terms of water disputes here, and this is part of my PhD thesis, is that water projects upstream that has the potential to cause scarcity. It provides deterioration of water quantity or quality, bringing sensitivity, which leads to the impossibility to adapt to negative effects, vulnerability. It creates vulnerability to the state downstream. And then states or countries are conducted to a cooperation process, ideally, not to war. I'm not in favor of the thesis that water scarcity will lead countries to wars. So jumping into the international water law per se, we looked into the principles, and here I bring just some principles that we collect from the evolution of the international water law, from court decisions, the international court decisions or treaties, or even soft law. Helsinki rules, Berlin rules, and other pieces, normative pieces. And I call the attention here, and here is where I apply the third world approaches to international law. See, I'm not saying that international water law is bad. I'm not saying that we need to deconstruct in order to destroy it. No, I want to see what is working, and through the lens of third world approaches to international law, 12, I want to see what is working and what needs to be improved, and if there's any other alternatives to what is international water law right now. So when we looked into, for example, prior consultation principle, I tend to see prior consultation principle like just a procedural principle, because how many times we bumped into studies for example, in water projects, assessments that are handled to communities 10 days before a public audience with technical terms, piles of documents that community or the stakeholders, they don't understand a word of that. So prior consultation, yeah, it happened. The project was approved or received the license, but it was really a prior consultation, or it was just a procedural or a check in the box. Well, we did it. So there you go. So prior consultation to whom? What is the quality of the prior consultation? And also I call the attention here to the no significant harm, right? No significant harm to whom? Who's going to bear? Who's going to decide what is significant or not? It is the local community. What is significant harm to the local community or for the indigenous people that will be affected by the water project? So the lens that Trail gives to me when I look into international water law makes me to reflect, to ponder, and to try to look into this scenario with a critical view, in which I am not going to accept easily that. I'm going to question, I'm going to pose questions that will help to figure out what is behind of all of this this scenario, right? Like as prior consultation. Wow, it's there, but what's behind of that? What's the quality, or what's the how efficient it is? So when we looked into a critical perspective of water, we need to look into a reliable accountability system in which we have to legitimize the participation of non-state actors. And when I say non-state actors, I refer not to transnational companies, because they are to deal with the water projects, but local communities that are affected by water projects. Sharing information and network, I mean, also the quality, as I mentioned about the prior consultation. The interdependence on demands, the interdependence that will create demands for new spaces new public spaces that take into consideration culture, values and policies, not just the imperative of development at any cost. An increase of a constructivist approach, in which ideas and experiences are important, not just material factors. Regulating, we need to look into, as it is right now, we're looking into just regulating waste instead of regulating consumption. We have to also switch our minds and also take into consideration social relationships to water. And here I bring the concept of a water social cycle. We tend to look into the natural water cycle, but we have, when we try to conciliate social world and natural world, we have to look into the hydrosocial cycle as well, which is a shift from regarding water as an object of social processes to a nature that is both shaped by and shapes social relations, structures, and subjectivities. Is there any other forms? Here I bring to you, and I recommend reading this book, The Collapse of the Western Civilization. Although it deals with climate change, well, water is somehow related to the main point here made by the authors. It is very interesting because it is the authors brings this. It is a fictional, right? It is a fictional book, but a lot of factual or facts in the book mixed with the story. Western civilization approach to the climate crisis that ultimately led humankind to an irreversible thing. The book has three chapters. The coming of the penumbral age, or in other terms, the state of denial that climate change is a real problem, right? So the first phase is, no, it's not a problem. We can deal with that. And then the chapter of frenzy of fossil fuels. Well, consumption is not a problem. The use of water is not a problem. And then market failure. There is no limitation for capitalism, as the end of story has already shown. And the reference here of end of story, it is Francis Fukuyama's article of 1990s saying that, well, there's no, capitalism has won, there's no other alternative here. So in this fictional book, for the authors, the only country that survived was China. And here you can understand why I'm talking about here in this in this panel, Brazil, China, and international third world approach to international law. Because China took steps towards liberalization, but still retained a powerful centralized government that was able to move and save all the people from the effects of the climate change. That the end of the book is about that. So when I started looking into international law through the lens of Twale approach, as I said, I was looking into what is working and what is not working, if there's any alternative. So I bumped it into China. So it is a viable option to what we are seeing in international environmental law, and what we're looking into the water international law. So what is there when I started looking into the Chinese approach, which I've been investigating right now, especially considering, for example, the ecological civilization concept, which is not just a concept. It is a constitutional norm since 2018 in China, which differs from most of the constitutions in the world in which they bring environmental rights. So the Chinese constitution brings the ecological civilization not as a right, but as a national objective clause, in which all people, including the government, is liable to the objective. And of course, there's a lot of plans, red lines, the many plans that are connected to the Article 18 of the Constitution, but it is an objective. It is not just a environmental right that is very broad and no one knows the boundaries. It's a very objective thing. And it is not just rhetoric. I just quote here, for example, one of the speeches of the President Xi Jinping, ecological civilization as awareness of the need to respect, protect, and accommodate ourselves to nature, not to the environment, to nature. So in Chinese environmental law, we don't use environment, we use nature, because the Chinese consider that they are inserted to nature. People are part of the nature and not just an object to be observed. Other models of development, the Belt Road Initiative, which I'm looking into right now. This is part of my research project here, looking into environmental aspects of Belt Road Initiative as another model for development, because as far as the development in the world right now, we don't see many things good going on right now. And South-South cooperation, we tend to see this as points to present solidarity and coordination, the rejection of zero-sum games, mutual respect, fairness, justice, and win-win cooperation. So to that end, I finish my my presentation by presenting the Chinese approach to the governance of the environment as a whole, but applied to international water law, and that's the reason I presented this large picture to you, this theoretical framework of third world approach to international law, how we can look into international water law, and how can we find points to improve, and the alternative, as I see right now, the Chinese approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's important to us to realize that the law is actually a layer of many conflict ideas, and it's important to have this critical idea, especially bearing in mind not only international law, but even inside the systems, authoritarian laws, making people excluded from some infrastructures and things like that. So it's a very important aspect to us to be aware and critical to this possibility of law being exclusion tool instead of right-based, and also very, very interesting this different aspect of human right, not as an individual right, but as a social aspect. And certainly that comes from the recent experience of China in the Cultural Revolution, with the almost famine, almost desertification of all land. So a very recent experience of bad management of natural resources into tragic political outcomes. Thank you very much, Douglas. Now I I have Juliana here from directly from Brazilian government. She will bring us the insights of the government to our discussion. Thank you very much for giving us your time. So Juliana, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you all for the opportunity to share our recently updated National Water Resource Plan. I'll start my presentation. I'll share my screen. I think I'll have to shut down my camera because I'm having low signal. So in order to avoid any delays, okay? I'll stop my video. Sharing the screen. Okay, can you see the presentation? Good.
Yes.
Thank you very much. To understand our national plan, first it's necessary to understand that as a long-term plan, it needs to be developed as a process with mechanisms that guarantee its improvement. In this sense, the updates of its content are periodic to cover all the new perspectives or decisions or even improves that will be necessary until 2040. So it's an ongoing process which allows for the internalization of learning and the adjustments to the planning routes that have been laid out. So social participation in this context is the foundation of the entire Brazilian water resource planning system and a key element in the governance of the national water resource policy. In the elaboration process of this plan, which is all the three documents here are part of the plan, the greatest challenge was to provide state and non-state actors the access to the discussions that define the main issues and challenges to be faced up to 2040, especially considering the limitations imposed by the pandemic. So the entire participation system was adapted to online format and executed with the numbers you see on screen. So we had 41 meetings and events starting in 2019, up to 184 hours of workshops and debates, and 3,600 people from all the range and states or non-state actors to create these documents that I'll present next. So I'll briefly present these results. This is the first time we are showing this lovely picture that summarizes all our plan. So the action plan here, it's important to consider that it contains the strategies for management of water resources, and its general objective is to establish guidelines, programs, and goals agreed upon socially and politically from a consistent technical base, considering all this period of time, short, medium, and long term, which is actions that will take over more than 80 years to being accomplished. Okay, so this is the synthesis. Program 1, strengthening of the national water resource systems. Program 2, water resource management instruments. Program 3, quality and quantity management of water resources. Program 4, integration of the national policy for water resource with sectorial policies and plans. And finally, Program 5, monitoring and evaluation system for this plan. Keeping up with the proposal of our discussion here today, I'll look more carefully at the programs dealing with social participation and access to water. But it's important to state here that all programs are linked and they help each other's development, reinforcing the actions within it. So we consider the plan as a whole to achieve the goals of our national policy. So To ensure the participation of such diverse group of interests, I highlight this program, especially as a program 1.2, which is, as you can see, it's on screen now because we are working mostly online with our society, which aims that new institutional arrangements, more flexible, can compose the structure of our management system, which is known as SHRE, to better meet the demands and disputes existing within each basin. Here we analyze how it would be possible to incorporate new instances of public participation with consultative character, and how to provide better public service through the delegation of functions according to each problem or dispute identified. So the most relevant guidelines within this program, sub-program, sorry, it's the availability of information to society, the inclusion of the indigenous people and representatives of traditional populations in collegiate and institutional arrangements, and the promotion of gender equality of representation in collegiates and institutional water resource arrangements. So to improve these arrangements, communication between state and non-state agents must be clear and transparent. Let's remember that managing of water resources is such a complex activity, especially because in Brazil we have several federal and sectorial competencies involved. So we need to be as clear as we can. The role of communication and capacity building so that it's important that communication and capacity building of all these stakeholders became a key element to reach the established goals. Sub-program 1.4 here and here, capacity building and environmental education states that communication dimension confers legitimacy to the action, plans, and programs of water resources, incorporating the perspectives of the communities and relevant actors in the process. The capacity building offers the necessary knowledge to facilitate individual teaching learning process, as it intends to create dialogue and constant exchange of information and experience among various management parts. All the stakeholders will be able to attend this capacity building and training courses offered within this program. Environmental education also encourages the formation of critical thinking in each person, and it's important to ensure that this individual can acknowledge the coexistence with the ecosystem elements. So we stimulate and prepare the citizens and all the stakeholders for active and critical participation in water management spaces based on knowledge of our society, cultural and political complexity, because we have to acknowledge that here in Brazil with so many involved. And it's also noteworthy that among the guidelines within this program, we have institutional leadership and empowerment of women in water resource management. We have fostering gender equity in communication, capacity building, and environmental education actions. We elaborating a specific capacity building for indigenous people and traditional indigenous communities and traditional people, with a view to ensure their participation within the water resource management systems. And we also highlight here our program 5, monitoring and evaluation system, which ensures that all interested parties know what has been developed and what is being developed and what is not okay during our implementation process. So as you can see, all these programs are somehow linked and they are reinforcing each other. So the next and final, in order to, regarding to access to water, we have program 3, quality and quantity management of water resources, and special subprogram 3.5, which is water supplies and the efficient use of water. Danielle, this is one that you like the most. We will develop further and program of efficiency, which is key for us in this moment. And this program seeks to promote integrated management actions and investment in infrastructure to ensure the supply and efficient use of water, improving water security in watershed, considering human, economic, ecosystem, and resilience dimensions. Professor Granziera just illustrated one of the actions that is already under execution to ensure water security in the country, which is Agua Dulce program, freshwater program. And finally, program 4, I don't know, it's appearing 5 here, but it's 4. It's interface of our plan with sectorial policies and plans. This one is in particular, it's quite a complex one. It aims to integrate all of these guidelines and actions with policies of several water using sectors within our water resource policy to strengthen and make compatible the performance of the respective policies. In case of our plan, we consider user sectors as health, sanitation, tourism, industry, regional and urban development, agriculture and cattle raising, fishing, mining, energy, and navigation. So as you can see, it's quite a complex program to articulate and to give the same direction to many policies involved. So I briefly showed you our action plan. I would like to thank you all once again for the opportunity of sharing this brief presentation for this result of the joint work between state and non-state actors, which gave rise to our new updated plan. And that will be it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gil. It's amazing. There's an important to us to see how it is articulated, and it has been coherently articulating long decades already, our water policy in Brazil. And it's important to let the world know that as well. So thank you for your presentation. And without further ado, please, Batida, give us, the floor is yours. We are running out of time.
Hi, everybody. My name is Batida Elia. Batida is a peculiar name even for Brazilian because it's an indigenous dialect name that means flower in Tupi-Guarani. I study environmental management at the ESALC, the Superior School of Agriculture in the University of São Paulo. I'm part of a group they call GNHRE-UNEP. Is a group of studying and practice for rational use of water. And I'd like to present to you the result of more than 10 years of this research, and I will share with you some local solutions. And that's about how the global reproduce in the small local. So let me see. here. Okay, can you see my presentation? Okay, yes.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
So just quickly, Brazil, huge country, large rivers, as Daniela was showing us. Here we have the state of São Paulo, and here we have the Piracicaba River, the small city in Brazil. It's about 400,000 population. And this is a teeny river that we call Ribeirão do Piracicamirim. Smaller river supplies like 25% of the city population in Piracicaba, about 100,000 people. And this is the area we study. So it's a small river, like 24 kilometers in this river. And the main issues is an inefficient wastewater treatment plant. So, everybody knows the importance of wastewater treatment. And we don't have too much time, so I will pass to some of the slides. But the solution, the main problem we have is because, let me put in here, we analyze more than 10 years of every month, and the analysis presents.
You can show your slides.
Okay.
Yes, I talked to Dina, and she said we have 10 minutes more.
Okay, so
sorry, not letting you know that.
Let me go back. I was just 5 minutes. Let me go back. So let's talking about the importance of wastewater treatment. As Daniela said, Brazil have a lot of population without water properly to drink or to cook. And sewage, when untreated, is a possible significant source of change in the chemical composition of water bodies, harming not only the quality of water for use in downstream region, but also promoting physical chemical changes that can harm the living beings in this area, in this ecosystem. So the deterioration of water bodies is mainly due to the contamination of urban springs through dumping of domestic sewage and industrial influence. So the treatment for domestic sewage is very important to preservation the environment. The sewage contaminates river, lakes, and heavy sediments and microorganisms that can cause a lot of disease. So here we have a picture from the city. Unfortunately, this is the reality we live here in Brazil. In this context, wastewater treatment plants are ways to remove organic materials, suspended solids, pathogenic organisms, and nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus, resulting in the release of better quality effluents when compared to untreated sewage. So the area we are talking about, this small river, Ribeirão do Piracicamirim, we have a wastewater treatment plant that was being operated since 1989 and was built in less than 8 years to be building with limited resource and only has primary and secondary treatment. So the material and method of the research was samples that were collected every month for the last 10 years in this area, where there were no other or fluent input except for the wastewater treatment plant. So we took the water for 100 meters upstairs and 100 meters downstairs. We analyzed like 14 variabilities, like fecal coliforms, total coliforms, pH, and 3 of them is very important for this study: the electrical conductivity, the dissolved organic carbon concentration, and the dissolved oxygen concentration. About the electric conductivity, was verified that after the influence treatment between the upstream and downstream collection points, the electric conductivity value was higher due to the release of ions previously linked to the organic matter decomposed by the treatment process. What's a good point. The dissolved organic carbon concentration, there was a significant increase in dissolved carbon concentration, resulting for the disposal of the station's effluent. That is, even after the treatment, there is still a large amount of organic material being released. And the last one, there was no significant difference between the points sampled through the period, but only improvement in the rainy season, which would probably be a reflection of the turbulence of the water, which improves its aeration. So the conclusion of the research was this: the analysis concludes that there may be negative effects associated with the effluent release from the wastewater treatment plants into the wastewater of the Ribeirão, this small river.
Oh,
so
great.
The solution after this study is reuse the water for cleaning and irrigation of the gardens university. This is what we're gonna do right now. And in the future, the next steps is the reuse of water for irrigation of the university plantations. Isalco is a superior school of agriculture, so we use properly water to do this, to irrigation, but we could use the wastewater treatment. And we have a lot of benefits, reduce, even to fertilize the agriculture. And we are now working with a group of irrigation of sugarcane to make this possible in the future. So I'd like to thank you, Daniele, thank you, Professor Douglas, Maria Luisa, Juliana. Thank you for the amazing opportunity, and I am learning a lot with all of you. Thank you.
Oh, I'm the one who thanks you, because this research in Brazil and in the rest of the world, we need empirical research. We need policies that are data-driven. So these long-term researches with data systematically being gathered is so important. It's from a magnitude that it's much more broad than the river itself, but in the governance of water as a whole, this data systematically being done. I just have, before closing, I would like to quickly answer a question, a point raised, extremely important point raised by Candice Foot in the chat. She said, oh, we have this lack of enforcement of the guiding principles for business and human rights. What we have to do as legal scholars or management, environmental management managers, or policymakers, what should we do? So I don't have the silver bullet to all the problems, but my interpretation for this challenge is that law, it's not only command control, like you do and you don't do. We have to think it broadly and explore these other characteristics of law, especially in the environmental area. Normally, command control, do that, otherwise you will be punished. It doesn't work. We are having efficient opportunities with the voluntary goals that countries, companies, sectors self impose to them. In Brazilian law, the system of climate change have this dynamic. The sectors have to create the goals and the plan to achieve something. So this is what I think it's possible. It's not the best, but the better we can. So, and also it's not, the guiding principles have a role on guiding. And we have other things to think about, not only this voluntary systematic of sectorial things to think, but also using economic law. I particularly, maybe not even the majority of my colleagues agree with me, but I believe in the power of money. So in the environment area, so if we can tilt the environmental and the economic nudges to foster a benign corporate activity, we will create systematically and procedural lock-ins that the system goes by itself, no matter if the policies change, things like that. For example, the quality of efficiency of energy in Brazil with electrodomestic equipments, something that is the sustainable labels and community and consumers demanding this. It's very important and creates something of a symbiosis from demand, consumers, price, government, reducing artificially the price and increasing the competitivity of the technologies that is better for society. So we are not doing something new. Scholars are thinking about bridging the economic gaps for more than a century now. So we have this notion of using economic law to build policies that conduct the actions of the private sector towards the interest of society. And I think we are on this path with the pricing payment for the environmental services law in Brazil, recently approved and in state already in place for many years already, and recently approved in federal government. And also the carbon market, globally, the voluntary and the regulatory carbon market. I believe that we could have a very good effect in this. And of course, like the research of Professor Granziera, paying for the use of natural resources. For example, paying for the use of water, pricing it, correctly pricing it, taxing the the water, the virtual water, taxing the carbon footprint. So we have the legal means, the tools. We just have to design it wisely, having society and the planet in the focus and not the private sector and profits only. Profits as well, together with society and environment. That's it. Thank you for your question, Candice, and thank you all. I give the floor back to Dina for the last words, and sorry about the time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for these fascinating presentations. I feel like we could keep talking for a long time. We have a hard limit. Our next session is starting in 15 minutes. Please join us. It's going to be a fascinating panel on ocean plastics and ocean waste, a really critical issue. But again, a big thank you to all our panelists. A special thank you to Danny for organizing this and putting it all together. It's been a fascinating, wonderful panel, rich and complex and diverse in its approaches to thinking about this and in its case studies. We have recorded this session, so come back, watch it again. And I look forward to seeing you all at the next class. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Pleasure to be here.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.